Hello, everyone. I know it's been a while, but welcome back to Downstage. Yeah, I had to take summer off essentially because of some personal stuff. Uh, Plus, summer being entertainment season as it is, honestly, there wasn't that many stuff in terms to talk about in terms of just entertainment news. And as of right now, we're kind of like going in, it was like we're kind of like at the end of the award season. We're at the start of award season, so maybe we'll have a regular downstage episode in the next month or so. But in the meantime, I want to talk about some hypothetical crossover stuff that should have happened if the place was right. So picture this. It's Albuquerque, New Mexico, 2006. Wilson Fisk in New York wants to plow land. And because he wants to build a, something, he wants to build a, basically a front for one of his companies, like say a restaurant or a place to shell out reservoir or something like that.
A housing development.
A housing development, just something random. Doesn't matter what he wants to do. He just wants that plot of land. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, said plot of land happens to be under the control of one Gus Fring. Mm-hmm. So, feeling that he needs to have some representation, he sends out his number two, Wesley, to go down to ABQ to see what he does. And since this is a 3-person format now, I figure Hayden could actually take the next spot.
Well, so what happens here is Wesley would visit Mr. Gustavo Fring at one of his Los Pollos Hermanos restaurants. And they would have a meeting in his manager's office. Wesley would try his hardest to try and convince Gus Fring to come around to this idea of giving up his land, selling it to his benefactor, so to speak.
Yes.
Because he doesn't want to use his name.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, this is Gus Fring, and that land happens to be his chicken farm, where also his drug mulling and other activities take place. So he's not going to give that land up. So Wesley strikes out. But he doesn't take this lying down. No. So he reaches out to some local talent in the ABQ. Problem is, the DEA was also watching this place, and Wesley has now gotten caught up in the middle of a drug raid.
Yes.
And no, it's not the one where Pinkman just jumps out of a window naked.
Just random.
Totally different one. So now he is arrested, and he has to rely on a lawyer. And he doesn't know, all the big law firms of Albuquerque as well. So who does he turn to? Why, one Mr. Saul Goodman. And
in this episode, you will find out why Wilson Fisk has to better call Saul. People versus James Wesley. This is what happens when the character is always referred to his last name and you forget what the first name was. I'll add that in post. It's good to have the editing program again. That's another reason why I took a long break too. Is one, I needed to find a good editing program, and Premiere wasn't the best one to use because it always crashes, or always, and I mean always, just sluggishly does everything for that. Anyway, basically this episode of the hypothetical crossover that should have happened is about Wilson Fisk using the idea or the placement of one Saul Goodman into helping his friend James Wesley. And believe me, we were actually pitching, how would the idea of Wilson Fisk in an environment like Breaking Bad work, right? or Better Call Saul work, and be like, oh, obviously if he goes down to break, Albuquerque, it was like it'll be like a turf war with the Salamancas or a turf war with Gus, but the
Yeah, well,
way,
behind the scenes, we spent an hour trying to narrow this down.
yes, to something that's like brass tacks. It's like, oh, okay, oh, wait a minute, we have someone who could probably help. It's a guy named Wesley, but yeah, the idea is that we start off in New York, right? And basically, we find out that Wilson just wants to build something on ABQ. Doesn't really matter where it is. It's just some philanthropist thing that he wants to build, like say it's a restaurant or a reservoir or something like that. And then basically sends his, number two Wesley down there, and then leading to essentially Wesley getting arrested because he was trying to muscle Gus, and in order to do that, he wanted to get some local talent, and the local talent ended up being a stingray. So that's how and doing so, Wesley has to entrust one Saul Goodman. Now, the idea of Saul Goodman, essentially defending a guy who's basically that looks like a Wall Street banker. It's kind of hilarious because again, it's not our brand. It's not our brand of Saul Goodman to be, oh yeah, another businessman. It's like that's like what 2 in 1 week or something like that, or something. In a very quirky.
Saul can smell a paycheck.
Yeah, he knows. He knows. Damn, I was like, the rent is going up. All right, I can do this. Well, maybe I don't know, but before he even agrees to it, him and Wesley meet up in the local ABQ jail courthouse thing. He's in the interrogation room or waiting room, visitors room, whatever it's called, and they have a heart-to-heart between the two of them. Saul tells Wesley to basically take a deal because, hey, you're an out-of-town player. You obviously don't know your way around Albuquerque. My advice, just take the deal and, hope for a very, slap on the wrist, like sentence. And Wesley, I believe, will probably be like, I wouldn't have done that. And, it's like, I have friends who want me to succeed in this venture out west, right? And, Saul being
he can't waste his time here in a jail.
Yeah, I can't waste my time here, in jail. And Saul being Saul is like, what? It's like he's probably thinking of like, what, he like kid. I was about to say kid, because I think he would actually think that Wesley is probably like this young kid, because again, this is probably a few years before Daredevil starts, and Wesley is probably in his like 30s, so he'd be like, kid, out west, there's a bunch of people who are always trying to look for power here. It never goes well for them, and he's like alluding to like
So there's a reason it's the Wild West out here.
Yeah, there's a real reason why it's called the New Wild West. And no, I don't want that. I had a little notification that popped up right now. There's a reason why they call it New Wild West, kid, and now you're starting to find out why. Leaving Wesley in jail for that night, right? Because again, he said no, all that stuff.
Yep, he's not down. There's no way they'd let him. Yep.
Yeah. So cut to late at night. It's the Saul Goodman. What is it? Saul Goodman and Associates office.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely the Saul Goodman office.
Yeah, Saul Goodman office. Cut to the Saul Goodman office. He's going to. He's packing up for the night. He's saying goodnight to his secretary. Even after treating her badly throughout the day and all that stuff, he still cares about his secretary and all that stuff. Even though Saul being Saul, he cares what he does. Forgetting something, he goes back to his office, looks around in the desk, right? Finds it, and then when he looks back up, he sees this gigantic figure sitting in front of him. He's bald. He's wearing a very fancy suit, with a nice little ring on his pinky finger, similar to Saul actually. And I don't know. I think, Hayden, how would you think this meeting between this big figure and Mr. Goodman would actually play out?
Well, I think it would go. I would think it would first start with Saul just noticing him and being like, "Jesus, you're real quiet for a big guy." And then Wilson, still being the kind of person he is, would have to really restrain himself a bit from not wanting to choke this guy out.
Mm-hmm.
And he would simply respond, "Mr. Goodman, I hear you're representing a friend of mine, and James Wesley. And you told him to take a deal." But Saul, he's like, "Hey, buddy, I mean, look, he's just some man. Like, I know he's your friend and all this amount of time or whatever, but look, this is gonna be the easiest thing for him. I mean, if I represent him, like, it's just gonna waste everyone's time. I don't think you understand. I can actually pay you handsomely, to represent him. And all I have to do is just make sure he doesn't stay in jail forever for these charges that are knowingly absurd." And then Saul, seeing the dollar signs, is like, "Well, now, close the door. How much money are we talking here?" And then there we go. He is now representing him in a trial.
Yeah, and of course,
James Wesley.
Yeah, and now leading into the trial itself, we still have we still have some ways to go about that. But why is a figure like Wilson Fisk in ABQ? Well, obviously he wants that plot of land, and hearing Wesley was arrested, he immediately took a red eye and just like flew out west. Like he didn't wait like 5 hours. He even heard the moment he heard, he was like, "I'm going to ABQ." And then suddenly he's like, just took a red eye to whatever airport it's like near Albuquerque or whatnot. And then, the following night or later that day, depending on, when he got in, goes straight to see Saul. But that leaves in the matter of this pile of land that he wants. So what Wilson decides to do is actually go and speak to the man himself that owns this land, Mr. Gustavo Fring, aka the owner and CEO of Los Pollos Hermanos, one of the best chicken places I've ever been to. Their chicken is so good. It's addictive, but good.
Oh, I bet.
No, but the idea is that Wilson and Mr. Fring, Mr. Fisk and Mr. Fring more or less have a deal, right? But he still sees that that Fring is dead set on keeping this land, right? It's his land, it's his chicken farm. So Fisk, being a person of impulse, says, "You will regret this action," and then leaves. In true Wilson Fisk fashion. And of course, Mike, Fring's own right hand, Mike, what's his last name? Mike
Hermantraut.
Yeah, Hermantraut. There we go. It just ended, and now I'm just like, what the hell is that last name? So Mike Hermantraut is like, "Do you want me to take care of it, boss, or you want to take, in typical Mike fashion?
You want me to take care of it?"
I can't do his Mike voice. It's like his voice is so iconic, but at the same time, it's like you have to be very draw out in terms of actually speaking like Mike.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, "Do you want me to take care of it, boss?" And Gustavo is like, "No, this problem will go away itself." Cut to maybe a couple days later.
Actually, I think we'd probably be cutting to the trial while that's taking place as well.
Yes. Cut to the trial, right? Wilson, not Wilson. This has also been happening for the past hour or so. We keep on saying Wilson, Fring at the same time, so we're kind of like so if Wilson gets tossed around, well, accidentally, it's because the original plan was that Saul Goodman was essentially defending Wilson Fisk, but again,
And then we also throw out that plan for a different plan until we throw out that plan for another plan until we got to this one.
yeah. Again, it's fun being a person, a trio, and just trying to figure out what is that, idea behind it.
Welcome to Downstage Behind the Curtain.
But I don't know. In terms of this trial, Darren, how do you see this trial going? Like,
Okay, so we're still on. Is Wesley?
Wesley is being on trial for essentially being at the wrong place at the wrong time, essentially trying to hire some essentially no-name goons that were on the DEA's list.
Yeah, I definitely think Saul Goodman, he would. It would kind of be like a pretty like shut and like close case where he would just say, yeah, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah, he would look at him like, this guy, he's here for one day and he's already like in handcuffs. Like, what is this?
I thought this was America.
Yeah. And yeah, he would just say something along the lines of, yeah, this guy's here for a day, and he's being mistreated. He might even be profiled, or if anything, by the way he looks and how young he is and how he's dressed. And you guys just looking for a scapegoat to put the blame on, and that's not fair. And I demand a mistrial, something like that.
Yeah,
Don't let the quota fillers of the cops overrule your sense of reason.
I also imagine he was also probably going to say, just because he looks like a yuppie and acts like a yuppie doesn't mean he is a yuppie. Because
it's not his fault he's from the East Coast.
Yes. It's not his fault he's from New York. Because again, people out west probably hate people from out east, and people who are from out east hate going out west. So, and then there's that Midwest, Mideast portion of America where it's just like, yeah, we're kind of good by ourselves, but that's a different story. But yeah, in terms of the trial, I actually do see like Saul building up a good case around saying, Mr. Wesley was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Yes, he was trying to hire people who were known criminals, but come on, who in this town hasn't tried to solicit some criminal in a year?
And how do you even know what he was soliciting them for? You assume it's criminal? You don't know what his orientation is. How do you know he wasn't soliciting them for just a fun night on the town?
And also, we're in a recession, people. It's like, because again, during this time in America, there was a little recession happening. So I would imagine Saul even using that as a little ploy thing. But of course, the DA, right? So probably like DA, or some attorney that Saul doesn't know, but still has heard about, like, say, DA Harkness or something like that. The DA Harkness says, Mr. Goodman's arguments are quite crystal clear on grounds to being quite trying to speed this up as a mistrial, obviously, and then it basically becomes like a back and forth between this DA and I almost said Miguel again, damn it. To Saul basically saying, until the judge finally says, stop it, this is a trial, behave yourselves, all that stuff, classic fashion. Because again, if we all know something about Saul Goodman, he knows how to make an ass of himself, but also knows how to make an ass out of a trial. So even if he tries to do that, maybe the judge is a little obvious to that little ploy of, you just want me to throw out this case, do you? He was like, no, I don't want you to throw out this case, unless you want to throw out that case, But of course, we joke about Saul being like a jokey thing, but I think even in those moments of he actually looks over, we actually see the court side of Saul Goodman, even as a criminal. He finds out, okay, the DA just sent over the stuff about, the court case. he sees what to expect, next, going forward, like what type of evidence, all that stuff. He even sees that, the two people that, Wesley tried to hire were basically, maybe old clients of his. So that even puts him, because Saul Goodman is a criminal lawyer, he knows, like, sometimes, a lot of these people tends to be overlapping. And because of this, and because the fact that he knew these two random criminals, he knows exactly how to get out of this case. And
yeah, I can even see like him talking to like those two criminals that he once had as clients, and just like convince them, hey, just follow along with the story, and when you're on the stand, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. And then we hear these stories these criminals have come up with, and it's like, yeah, so this fancy guy in a suit, we kind of thought, hey, he looks like an easy mark, let's talk him up, let's shoot the shit with him, and then maybe we rob his shit.
the process,
And then just like admit to that, but then Saul at the same time would just like find a way to get their sentences reduced,
Right.
and their trials come up.
Yeah, but in the meantime, he actually says that, but he actually spins the story around saying, but this guy, there's a guy in a suit, he really just wanted to show a way around town. He'd never been out west before. He's in a new place like Albuquerque. He wanted to see the sights and sounds. So he figured he was a good. We figured he would be a good mark to go around, and because of the way he carried himself and how rich he looked, it's like scamming for money, all that stuff. And because of that, and because of the two witnesses, the two people that Saul
And here's one of those witnesses.
Yeah. The cat, always the cat. Nice to see our resident mascot Sophie. I know the Sophie was just like, I want attention right now.
Yeah.
But we see that Saul, actually being the criminal lawyer that he is, and actually working a way to drop this case, is by having the two random criminals that were, yes, Sophie, I see you. He's like looking at me. He was like, yes, I see you. I also felt her staring into my soul just now too. So it's like,
it's those blue eyes, man.
I have blue eyes too, and I don't do that.
Yeah, but you're not that close to the camera as she is. Oh God. Don't look into my soul.
But yeah, I see Saul Goodman treating this case with the way he would probably treat a regular case, right? With his classic chicanery, but at the same time would actually do the work and actually see that, oh, these two criminals that he was with actually were old clients of mine, right? So he would use that to his advantage, and by doing so, he would get, not only their charges reduced in the future, right? But also get this guy off of it, get Wesley off, because they basically spin a story that basically say, oh, this guy was just an out of town looking for a night out of town, and he happened to pick two guys who are known grifters or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good connection to make, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And and of course Wesley happens to get off the case. The case was dismissed. DA Harkness is like, ah, damn it, I should have prepared for this more, because again, it's like, even when you think you could win against Saul Goodman, he always seems to find a way to find some loophole or find some witness or something like that, and basically unscrew the entire case that you had already, and then watch it fall. Like, he's really that good of a lawyer. Well, not necessarily that good of a lawyer of some guy in New York, but that's a different story. That's a different crossover one day that we probably would do. Maybe not. Maybe so. I don't know. Anyway, but
I mean, he certainly doesn't have any questions of morality compared to that other one.
Yes. But while the trial is going on, right, we go back to what happened with Fisk, right? During the same night as during the same night as Saul is looking at the records of like that the DA is looking at, Gustavo is exiting out Los Pollos Hermanos, right? He is about to go to his car when some guy comes up to him and then says, I have a message from Wilson. Someone, you just see someone, the guy gets shot, and then from a rooftop across the way, you just see Mike or Herb Knott just like taking just like chambering the round of a sniper rifle, just saying.
It's bolt action.
It's bolt action.
It just pulls the bolt back. You see the cartridge just fly out.
Yeah. I got one. Looks like there's another one coming up behind you, boss. And then you just hear like a little, you want me to take care of it? Please do, Mr. Herman Trout. Have a good night. And
I think there'd be one more thing too. I could be like, so what do you want to do about this Fisk guy? And then Gus would be like, I believe it is time to make a deal.
yes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, and then on the morning of the trial where Saul is also, using the two crooks as witnesses, right? During the same time, Wilson is also meeting with Gustavo Fring. And Gustavo is so poised and so calm that even a guy like Fisk is somewhat unnerved by this. Because he never seen someone this calm and collected before. And Gustavo is like, Mr. Fisk, I understand you want land that, obviously land that I do not want to get rid of. But there is land that is obviously up for grabs a few miles away. But I need you to take care of a problem of mine. Let's just say enemy of mine. Well, not necessarily an enemy, but what's that word?
A rival.
Rival of mine. There we go.
Rival?
A rival of mine has been trying to buy the same land at a more discounted price. He wants it to become a condominium or something like that. And Fisk, being Fisk, is like, just tell me where, just tell me where. I mean, just tell me where and when this guy is. And the next thing you know is that, the next scene that you just cut into is Fisk just driving out this guy who is just like, he has a bag over his head. Mike is with him just to make sure, everything goes right. They're driving out to the desert. Fisk gets out of the car at a certain point, grabs the guy out of the car, just tosses him down. Mike just watches this with a straight face. It's like he's seen everything before. But what he hasn't seen is the guy begging for his life, and then Wilson just grabbing a rock, and as he's just begging for his life, just smash a rock into this guy's face and just like slowly and just brutalizing this guy with this one rock until he's finally done and goes, do you have a shovel? And Mike is like, yeah. And he goes to get the shovel and spends the next couple of minutes or a couple of hours just digging a hole for this guy. And Mike is just like, he's just so stunned for words. It's like he never actually seen such brutality, such ferocity before. Not unlike some other person that he knew of, Tuco. But Tuco was a hothead. This guy is on a whole nother level than Tuco.
Yeah, this guy didn't need drugs to get all. Like with Tuco, he was always on something pretty much.
Yeah. This guy's even worse than twins. Like this guy is even worse than Salamanca. But it's good to have this guy in the back pocket. And following this, Mike goes to Gus, tells him what happened, and Gus is just like, I see. Well, he and Fisk have a one more last discussion, and gives him one piece of advice to bring to him while going back to New York after hearing that Wesley has, won his case. He just says to Fisk, have some compassion behind your rage. That way, no one expects the ferocity, the fire underneath your revenge. Because after all, even when you're planning a revenge or performing a revenge, have some courtesy and composure, leading to a more composed, poised Wilson Fisk that we see in Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
And then and I think he even would say something like, "It will help you hide in plain sight, like I do."
Yes. And, after Wilson leaves, Mike just goes to his boss and just goes, this guy, he is just too, I'm trying to look for the right word. He's just too.
He's too unstable, boss.
Yeah, he's too unstable. He's just too unstable. And Gus knows, he's like, I know, but maybe in the future he will have his uses. But until then, let's just focus on the narrative. And just goes on the regular day of a Los Pollos Hermanos,
And I think there'd be one more thing too, of like, do you remember where the body was buried? Yeah, I got the coordinates.
Mm-hmm.
And we could even cut to like where the body is buried, and then it would like flash forward, like that kind of time flash forward. That's very common in like the Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul shows, where it shows the land development starting over the burial ground of this dead guy.
Yeah,
and that was the land that Wilson got.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. That's a nice touch. Yeah.
And then we end the episode on two fronts. One, Saul Goodman having some sort of victory with the thing, but it's still a stilted victory because he does still feel like, I use myself again to win a case by, again, a lot of the Saul stuff that we see in Better Call Saul has a lot more weight when you see Saul in Breaking Bad, because he's just more in Breaking Bad. He's a lot more freer in terms of like his thing, but in Better Call Saul, we see the actions that he does, and like even with this case with Wesley, he is just like, what have I done yet again? Like, like even he heard from the grapevine of Wilson like just killing this guy, and it's like, and hearing about this land development and all that stuff is happening soon. It's just like he's just like, but.
He could even like pull up his flip phone. He still has Kim's number.
Yeah, and he wants.
And he's like, "Is he going to do it?" And like, "Nope, that's not who I am."
Yeah, he just wants someone to talk to. Because again, at this point in his life, he has no one else to talk to outside of no one else, because everything else is just like
just the secretary who he treats like crap.
Yeah, but we do end this episode back in New York. Wilson is just enjoying his life now. It is now a few years later. It is now like a similar problem where whatchamacallit,
one of his associates is in a very bad legal situation and has been caught by the police.
In Albuquerque?
No, New York.
In New York.
And it's like one of those.
So timeline wise, let's kind of set it too. So remember the episode of Daredevil where that guy shows up at the bowling alley and kills that one dude with the bowling ball?
Yes.
That's where we are timeline wise.
Okay.
And then to end this episode, he's like, okay, I have Wesley is like, well, what do you want to do, boss? And well, he wouldn't say boss, but what do you want to do? Whatever it is, like what he would call him. And it's like
Mr. Fisk.
Yeah, Mr. Fisk is like, do you have that? And Fisk was like, you have the number for Mr. Saul Goodman. And Wilson, Wesley will probably like take off his glasses and goes like, you haven't heard news about it. And then it's like, and then you just get like this whole info dump, like as much as you can for the past like couple of seconds, or like tell them what happened to Saul Goodman and all that stuff. And it's like, we end this episode with a call between Saul Goodman, or rather James McGill, in prison. I should say a little spoiler alert, but again, this is Breaking Bad, so at some point, I'm sorry, we're also spoiling it for Darren, who hasn't watched season 6, but
we're gonna mention that. I'm
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna watch it regardless. The spoiler itself isn't worth the visual, so I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, but we see James McGill in prison. He has a phone call, which is odd because he's usually the one that calls people out.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes his telephone, calls, and hears the familiar tones of one Wilson Fisk, and goes, "Mr. McGill, I can get you out of prison, but I need your help with one thing." And I think it's probably best for Hayden to actually say what McGill would actually say in this thing.
Take it away.
Okay.
Take it away, Hayden. End this episode.
First thing, we had one quick correction, because I think he would have still called him Saul Goodman, because that's how he knew him. So Fisk would have, referred to him as Goodman, being like, "Mr. Goodman, I've heard about your fortunate legal troubles. But if you like, I could offer you some support, and in return, I would need your services." And it would just simply end with Jimmy just going, "The name's Jimmy McGill. I'm not a lawyer anymore." Hangs up and just walks away.
Yes.
Just kind of accepting his fate. And we cut back to New York, where Wilson Fisk, disappointed with the news, begrudgingly goes, "It seems Goodman has retired from the law. Do you have anyone else we can rely on, Wesley?" And then Wesley would go, "Well, there are these new lawyers in this new, very new up-and-coming law firm. They're not connected to us, so it's perfect. What are their names?" I believe it was Nelson and Murdoch.
Cut to black. And there we go. That's the end of the and that's how we figure out. Oh, and that's how we pitch a hypothetical crossover that should have mostly happened at College Play. But hypothetical crossover, I honestly like we were joking before, it took us an hour. It literally did take us an hour to figure out how to actually plan this out. Because the original plan was, Wilson Fisk has to be defended by Saul Goodman. But then figuring out, okay, if Wilson is in Albuquerque, right? And this is like the younger days of Wilson Fisk before pre-Keepin, it'd be a lot more for one hand, he would already try to be that much of a dangerous risk. So having him as basically almost as a supporting character between his liaison, it actually fits a lot more better with the character itself, because again, a lot of what Kingpin does is behind the scenes, and the times you do see him, front of house on camera actually performing the thing, you actually do see how dangerous this guy is. And if he was in Albuquerque trying to perform some business, then obviously all the playing cards are just tossed out, okay, this has just become a D&D campaign that's become off the rails, like that would be Wilson Fisk in Albuquerque, an entire thing off the rails. But
Your Honor, my client is built different.
Yeah.
OC 20 for persuasion, not 20.
yes.
Yeah, you're right. He is built differently.
Yes. And we did figure out a good thing, because again, it was maybe it was some mob boss they had to go out and kill, something like that. But then him trying to get some land would actually still be a Wilson Fisk thing to do. And I think the idea that we came up with is that Wilson just wanted to have land that was actually owned by Gus Fring, so we would have a couple of scenes with Mr. Fisk and Mr. Fring just being who wouldn't want to see Giancarlo Esposito and Wilson and Vincent D'Onofrio just share a scene together as their two iconic characters, especially especially their two iconic criminal characters.
Yeah, that would be great actually to see. That would be great.
Yeah,
especially because Wilson Fisk being the person who wants to have as much information on a person just like Gus as well.
Yeah.
So then it would be like, okay, who knows more about the other?
Yes. And it definitely feels like the type of thing where it's just like, oh, we definitely have a memorable scene on hand where it is like, one, you see the dangerous and unstableness of Wilson Fisk, specifically with that scene of him with that rock. And then you have that familiarity scene of composure behind the composure to hide the fire inside of you, a la, Gus's whole revenge thing. But Gus, when he performed that revenge in Breaking Bad, that was just like years in the making of him, just like sitting on the sidelines, just like getting all the info that he needed, sort of like what Fisk does in Daredevil, where it's just like he has all the players in place, and then suddenly it's just like he has just like one fell swoop in order to become king of New York, or kingpin, I should say. And yeah, like I like this idea very much because again, Saul Goodman wouldn't be too out of place in a world like the MCU, or even a world like Daredevil. Where it's like you would have like a Saul Goodman type of character where it's like someone would be a criminal lawyer who would always seem to be, representing all these criminals, or when
like I can just imagine how hilarious it would be, like if you say representing the Hulk, and he's like, Your Honor, my client has a legal right to smash.
And this is the idea of just Saul Goodman in the MCU, just like it's like him trying to
Well, just imagine too, like him coming across, because now the She-Hulk Attorney at Law shows out. Just imagine his interactions with She-Hulk.
Yeah, like him and Jennifer Walters was like, Jennifer Walters is like talking about law, and he's talking about law, and then he turns to the camera and then does some fourth wall thing, because again, She-Hulk is able to see the fourth wall because of something that's actually related to the Hulk's ability, which is because the Hulk was gammaly infused. He's able to see, like, it's sort of like the thing in like WandaVision where Monica is able to see like the spectrum of like energy, whereas Hulk is able to see the spectrum of like gamma energy. So but for Jennifer, she's able to see like something outside of that energy, so like a combination of two, hence her breaking the fourth wall. But again, that's always been a character trait. But again, I actually just see, like, nowadays it's like having a scene between her and Saul Goodman, that would be a great kind of like like not what if, but just like a character moment of just like them having a heart to heart, just like her trying to figure out how to be a good lawyer, and him just talking about it doesn't matter like what type of lawyering you do, it just matters like the type of clients you bring to the table. Like, as long as you treat your clients right and all that stuff, and you don't think it as a business, then you become like a very good lawyer. I think that's another thing with Saul, is that for the longest time he always saw it as a business before he saw it as it just being like, I want to be as a lawyer. I want to be just right.
Also, I can just imagine him like going to She-Hulk and be like, well, they really do build them differently here in New York. Huh? Yeah, y'all are pretty tough after all. Oh, by the way, that's Huel. I think you two will be good together.
Well, actually, this is LA, so She-Hulk takes place in LA. So.
Oh, for some reason I thought it was New York.
No,
don't know why.
It's LA. It's LA.
That's because,
okay.
That is because a lot.
Well, I think because like they were showing Daredevil in one of the trailers. So I'm thinking, okay, well, Daredevil's New York.
Yeah.
But Daredevil has yet to arrive in LA, because it's like first off they were like, how is he going to LA? It's like then they kind of like tell us about a superhero designer that this is basically Edna Mode, but in name only. But it's like he's basically Edna Mode, but but he does stuff for superheroes. And like I can understand him actually going to New York and actually getting a better shoot than the one that Melvin did, because Melvin, he worked with what he had in New York. But if Daredevil went to a place that had basically is tailor made for superhero people, then it's obviously makes it more. And suddenly this episode became an episode of Downstage. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Downstage.
Here's a crossover you didn't expect.
Me talking about an actual episode. So, no, but in all serious, folks, I legitimately see this hypothetical crossover happening, but playing out as we sort of pictured it. I don't know. Obviously, Vince Gilligan and someone at Marvel probably would have a different idea. But hey, Vince, someone at Marvel, Kevin, Biggie, if you happen to be watching this, maybe give us some co-creator story credits.
Yeah, we know you're your guilty pleasure, so.
Even though the damage didn't say that much this episode, because again, this is his first episode doing hypothetical crossover.
Yeah, it was
so he has to learn the ropes of how everything works. So
yeah, it was a pleasure to just watch. Yeah, and just observe.
I'm sure he'll be able to talk more about what have you.
Yeah,
because I think though we should I should tease to. I mean, it is.
Oh yeah, we should. I think we should tease it. It's definitely a fun one too to tease.
It's October, people. It's coming up to October. Spooky season is in effect, and picking back on Daredevil, the Defenders, Matt Murdock, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Jewel in some cases, Danny Rand, better known as the Iron Fist, and Luke Cage, the Power Man. They go against the four pillars of horror economy. Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Leatherface, Jason Voorhees. What would happen if the Defenders took on the icons of horror? And that, my friends, is where we're going to leave off the next episode. Because I feel like that's not going to be one big episode. That's going to be like 4 episodes detailing between each of the Defenders and their
respective scary villains, or horror villains they have to fight.
And on top of that, though, I mean, and during this time, you may see a Downstage episode here and there, but it depends on how well the entertainment world is going. Because again, we're in award season, and award season is there's no real big events outside some stuff that's happening in Broadway. A few shows are closing, but it's nothing really. It's nothing really big to talk about outside of Phantom of the Opera closing or Beetlejuice closing again. Funny Girl, stuff like that too. But maybe, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks or so, there'll be some good story that we could talk about on Downstage as a regular episode. But tune in next time to figure out, would the man with no fear last against the fear god, the Nightmare King himself, Freddy Krueger? How would he fare? How would a depressed Catholic go against someone who is not only who was actually, anyway.
Yeah. How would someone who preys on your fears and your nightmares fare against a man of no fear?
I would probably treat it like a death battle. I would just look at their stats and their weaknesses and abilities, and
I have an idea, but
from there.
That is until next time. So take care, everybody, and please be safe.